Hi everyone, thanks for joining this NBS Chorus Masterclass covering the use of notes in Chorus Pro. Before we get underway, a little bit of housekeeping for today's session. The webinar will last a maximum of 60 minutes. During the session, your microphones will be muted. You can use the questions box on the GoToWebinar control panel to ask questions. We'll follow up by email after the session. Also, this session is being recorded. We'll make this available to watch again later via the NBS website. Your speakers for today are myself, Martin Marks. I am one of the trainers at NBS, and my colleague Gareth Morgan, who is our sales manager. The agenda is deliberately quite short for today's session. That's because the masterclass is specifically focused on two great notes features. I'll start firstly with specification notes. I'll explain who can use them and what they are intended for. Then I'll switch into Chorus and show you how Spec Notes work. Next, I'll address organisation notes in a similar fashion. I'll explain who can use them and what they are intended for. Then I'll switch back into Chorus and show you how org notes work. Lastly, I'll hand over to my colleague Gareth, who'll wrap the session up and advise how you can get in touch with us. So, firstly, specification notes. Specification notes is a feature which is applicable to customers with either Chorus Pro or a Chorus Enterprise plan. Specification notes are also applicable in all content sets and all libraries within each content set. The principal intention of Spec Notes is to allow you to record decisions made when authoring your specification. Spec Notes are created against specific clauses or articles, including both NBS content and user-added clauses or articles. So whether that's the rationale behind why a specific clause was linked in a uniclass specification, or why something has been worded the way it has, or documenting an important discussion with a client or another member of the design team. Even recording why a particular product was specified, or conversely, why other products perhaps were ruled out for the project. It allows you to put all of that critical information in one logical place, right there in the specification and tied to the individual clause or article in question. So in however many months or however many years' time, if something gets questioned, you can simply refer back to the spec notes and see all the information that was recorded whilst the specification was being written, all logically presented and date and time stamped, rather than having to retrospectively trawl through emails and meeting minutes and such like. Specification notes are only visible within your own Chorus organization. However, anyone that you have provided access to the specification can view, add, and reply to spec notes. Now, this includes guests. So that would be external parties who you have invited into the project but are not members of your Chorus organization. I should also mention that spec notes can be created for master specifications, and they work in master specifications in the same way that I'm going to show you in a minute within a project. And spec notes are viewed exclusively within Chorus itself. They do not get published with the specification in any way. Do remember what I said earlier, however. they are visible to anyone you invite into your project and your specification. Let me now switch into Chorus. And click into my Notes project, then into my main residence specification. You'll notice this is a common arrangement of work sections specification, but Spec Notes work in the same way that I'm about to show you in other content sets. So this is a specification I have recently started. I don't have a great amount filled in just as yet, as you can see, but I have made a start in F10. So let me click into that and into clause 110. So firstly, I can see from this badge on the Spec Notes tab that there are 4 Spec Notes already for this particular clause. And if I click on this Spec Notes tab, I can review what they are. So the first thing to note here is that Spec Notes are arranged in threads, or you might refer to them as conversations. And as you can see here, you can have multiple Spec Note threads. Now, where a thread has one or multiple replies, as a number of these threads do, you'll see the option to show replies. If I just expand this top one, I can see the full history of what has been recorded here. So, I scheduled a meeting to discuss the brick choice with the client. I had also researched some options in NBS Source and emailed the product links to the client for review. I then had a follow-up conversation with the client, Alan, who has selected a particular brick. As such, I've recorded this Spec Note as a record of that discussion, and I can see I also updated the clause. My colleague Nick has then looked into lead times and availability for me and concluded that this brick has too long a lead time. He's then discussed options with the client. I've then spoken again with the client and agreed an alternative selection. I've updated the spec, and again, I've noted this down as a record of this discussion. I can also roll this thread or conversation back up by clicking here on Hide Replies. And I can also expand out all of the other threads in a similar manner. Next, you'll notice at the top of the Spec Notes panel, it indicates that we're currently viewing the Spec Notes associated with clause 110, clay-facing brickwork. Spec Notes are made against an individual clause or article, as they're referred to in the Canadian content. So if I scroll down to the next clause, 255, and click into that, you can see from the top that I would now be viewing or adding notes against clause 255. But in this clause, there are currently no Spec Notes for the clause. And in fact, Spec Notes are only presented against the single specific instance of the clause or article against which they were added. They are not therefore presented against any other instance of the same clause or article in either the same or any other specification or master specification. So if I jump back now to the specification list using the breadcrumbs, and I now click into the guest house spec, then into F10, then clause 110. and just click on the Spec Notes tab. You can see here, or rather not see, the notes from my main residence specification for the same clause are not visible, as they are specific to that clause in that particular spec. Spec notes are also not copied or duplicated with the clause or article. So if I navigate back to my main residence specification and back into work section F10 and clause 110, and I just click on the Spec Notes tab so I can see the 4 notes once more. Now, if I duplicate this clause, then scroll down and click into it, you can see the spec notes are not copied when I duplicated that clause. Also, if I jump back to the contents list using the breadcrumbs and I copy that whole work section. So I could use the Actions button. I'm just going to use Control-C to copy that work section. I'm then going to navigate back, this time into my garage block specification. And this is a completely blank, completely empty specification. So I'll just use Control-V on the keyboard to paste that work section. Now if I click into F10 and clause 110 and into the Spec Notes tab, again you'll see the notes are not copied with the clause. So basically, if a section or clause is copied into another specification or to a master specification, or a clause or article is duplicated within the same specification or master specification, the copy or duplicate of the clauses or articles will not have any spec notes copied over with them. Next, I'm going to show you how you can add spec notes. I'll jump back to my first spec and back into F10 and then down into clause 255 and again into the Spec Notes tab. So very simply, you would just click here where it says add a note here, and you would type in your note. You can also apply formatting, such as bold, italic, underline, strike through, include bulleted lists, and include hyperlinks, in the same way as you can in the specification rows themselves. So I'm just going to emphasize this last sentence here using bold and underline. And very simply, I would just click on send. You can also reply to an existing note or thread. So I'll just scroll back up to clause 110. And click into it. So if I scroll down here and just expand this thread here. So this thread relates to selecting or specifying the joint type. And if I want to reply in this particular thread, I can just click on reply. You'll see here I am actually replying to Nicholas Armit. And Nicholas is the person that last added to or created a spec note as a reply in this particular thread. Now, just to save you having to watch me type this note in, I've actually got it typed into my notepad. I'm just going to go and copy that, and I'm going to paste that in there. So having now created my reply, I would just click on send. Now, if I look at the original spec note at the start of this particular thread, you will see this icon and the row name of joints. This indicates this specification note relates specifically to the joints row. To add a spec note relating to a specific row, rather than clicking in the box at the bottom of the screen straight away, you need to click into the clause, hover over the row that you want to link the note specifically to, click on the menu button and select Add Note to this row. It would then add a note to, in this case, recycled content. You would then click in the box and type in the note that you want to include. Lastly, in terms of adding notes, let me just add a new clause 100. And scroll up and click into that new clause. So you can add spec notes against user added clauses. And again, just to save you watching me type this in, I have this in my notepad, so I'm going to copy that and I'm just going to paste that into here and click on send to add that note. So now I'll talk about how you can edit and delete spec notes. Firstly, if I hover over the note that I personally have just added, I can see this menu option in the top right hand corner. And if I click on that, I can see options to edit the note or delete the note. So if I click on edit, it opens up the editor, which looks and works in exactly the same way as when initially adding the note. I'm going to change this to say facing bricks and blocks. And maybe I want to include some formatting in here as well. So within the editor, you can add text, you can edit text, you can delete text, you can add and remove formatting, bulleted lists, hyperlinks, just as you would if you were creating the note initially or working within the main editor screen for the rows. And I simply need to just click on Save to save my changes. Now, when a note has been edited, you will see that it is appended with the word edited in brackets at the top. Let me click back on that menu button. You also have the option to delete your note. Now, if your note is the initial note in a conversation thread, deleting the spec note will also delete all replies in that particular thread. If, however, your note was a reply within a conversation thread, it would only delete your reply. All other notes in that conversation thread would remain. Also, please be aware that deleting spec notes cannot be undone. Now, let me find one of my colleagues' notes. And I'll just hover over it. I also see the menu button, but this is only because I am an administrator of this project. If I was just a reader or a contributor to this specification, I would not see that menu button on anyone else's note. And if I click on that menu button, I can only see the option to delete the note. So as a project administrator, I can delete other people's notes, but no one else can edit any other person's specification notes. Finally, for specification notes, let me click back to the contents list from my breadcrumbs. It tells me at the left-hand side that I have 13 specification notes in this specification. I can also see that from the Spec Notes tab at the top of the contents list here. And if I click on that, I can see a summary of all of the notes, who wrote it, and when it was added or last edited. Like many of the other grids in Chorus, I can click on these column titles to sort by that column, and click again a second time to reverse the sort direction. And you'll notice the clause titles are also hyperlinks. So if I click on one of those, it will take me to that clause so I can review the spec notes associated with it. So now I'll return to my presentation and I'll next talk about organisation notes. So, for organisation notes. Organisation notes is a feature which is applicable to customers with either a Chorus Pro or Chorus Enterprise plan. Organisation notes are also applicable in all content sets and all libraries within each content set. The principal intention of org notes is to record best practice and lessons learnt from earlier projects and present and share this internally with the whole team for reference when authoring specifications. Org notes are created against specific NBS clause or article classifications rather than specific instances of the clause or article. For sectional-based content, they can also be created against an NBS section. They can also be created against specifications or master specifications. So it could be that on a project you've had a particularly good experience and wish to share that as best practice, or conversely a particularly bad experience and wish to share that as lessons learned. Or perhaps as an organisation you have a preference for the type of products to be specified, or a preference for a specific manufacturer or specific product, or perhaps an approved list of manufacturers that you want your specifiers to use. Another example could be that you wish to note factors which need to be carefully considered by the specifier when drafting the clause. For example, the need to consider airtightness in rooms protected by a gas fire suppression system. Whatever information you wish to share, it will be right there at the fingertips of your specifiers, and they can review that when drafting the clauses or articles the next time. Organisation notes are only visible within your own Chorus organisation, and they are only visible to members of your organisation. That is, colleagues who have been invited into your Chorus organisation to use your Chorus subscription. They are not visible to guests. That is, external parties that you have invited into a particular project, but who are not members of your organisation. Organisation notes can only be created, edited, or deleted by your colleagues who have been given the organisation administrator role. And that is within, obviously, your Chorus organisation. However, as I mentioned before, all of your colleagues will be able to see and review the org notes. And org notes are viewed exclusively within Chorus itself. They do not get published with the specification in any way. Let me switch back into Chorus now and click into a master that I am currently creating. And I'm going to click into this gypsum board partition clause within this master. And you'll see that this is a Uniclass 2015 master, but org notes work in the same way that I'm about to show in the other content sets. Now, you might notice something that perhaps you haven't seen before. It's this yellow badge up here next to the clause code. This indicates that there are org notes associated with this clause, and the number on the badge indicates how many. This is also displayed on the org notes tab at the top of the panel on the right. Clicking on either will display the org notes panel. So now we can see the org notes panel. In this org note, I can see the first part of this note indicates some best practice. So where a gas fire suppression system is installed, consideration must be given to the structural and air tightness performance of the partition system, and that this must be discussed with the mechanical engineer, and details of that discussion should be recorded as a spec note. It also indicates that where auditoria partition walls are used, they're generally staggered studs, and the appropriate clauses need to be included. Then I have a few other items in this same single note, and you can possibly see here that the row titles have been used within this note and set to bold to identify a specific row that each of these parts of the org note relates to. So in here, there's some best practice information for DPCs, framing, and inner layers, and internal policy direction for samples and such like. Now, let me click into my suspended ceilings clause within this master. So this suspended ceiling clause has 3 org notes, and just have a quick look at each of these. So the first indicates general organisation preferences for ceiling types. For general areas, the preference is a generic office type suspended ceiling, so 600 by 600 mineral fibre tiles in an exposed T-grid. It also indicates some preferences for specific scenarios. So cold food preparation should have a metal pan ceiling tile in a concealed grid. It also indicates that for commercial kitchens, generally, for our clients at least, these are specified by others as part of a whole kitchen fit-out package. but it does identify, however, our internal expert, Nicholas Armitt, can be contacted for further advice. It also has a hyperlink to send Nicholas an email. The next note is a technical note, so perhaps in the past proper consideration maybe hadn't been given to the overall performance of the system as a whole. So just a polite reminder to do so. The last note here is a best practice note. And this has been created following an issue on a past project. In this note, the advice section indicates that consideration needs to be given for including ceiling clips, together with considering access arrangements, tools and spares. The caution section of this note indicates that, whilst inexpensive and easy to specify, ceiling clips shouldn't just be blanket specified, and it indicates the reason why. And the case notes section outlines the previous issue, that ceiling tiles were lifting in a specific scenario, and that a variation had to be instructed on the project, which obviously we don't want to repeat. There's also a hyperlink at the bottom, which links off to a document on our intranet to read the full investigation report. So we've seen a couple of example organisation notes. You've also seen that you can format the text and include hyperlinks. So at the bottom of the org notes panel, I can see the Create New Org Note option. That's because I am an administrator of my Chorus organisation. If I were an organisation member without the org admin permission, that option would not be available to me. So if I click on that, I can create a new org note. Let's give it a title. And the title will appear at the top of the org note when we're viewing it. And next I'll type my note. I'm just going to keep this simple, but the notes could be longer as you saw in the earlier examples. And you can also apply formatting, bold, italic, underline, bulleted lists, hyperlinks, and so on and so forth. So maybe I'm just going to highlight and apply a little bit of formatting there. So now I simply click on Create. And you can now see this at the bottom of the notes list here. Spare tiles to be provided was the title, and this was the note. Now, when I hover over the note, I can see this menu option in the top right corner. And if I click on that, I can see options to edit the note or delete the note. Now, editing and deleting org notes is also restricted to organisation administrators. However, any org admin can edit or delete any org note irrespective of who created it. Please be aware, however, that deleting org notes cannot be undone, and once deleted, the note will no longer be visible anywhere within your Chorus organisation. So if I click on Edit, it opens up the editor, which looks and works again in exactly the same way as when initially adding the note. So I'm just going to change this to say 2 boxes. And again, I could add or remove formatting, I could add more text, I could delete sections of text, I can amend the text as you can see there. And I'll just click on Save. to save those changes. Now, if I click on this Details drop-down, you can see it indicates the person that created the org note and the person that last edited the org note, together with the timestamp for each. Okay, so now we've looked at some org note examples and how to add them and who can add and edit them. Let's look at where they are displayed. Firstly, I'm going to navigate back to my project dashboard and click into my project, and then I'm going to click into my Uniclass specification. As you will notice, this is a blank, empty spec at the moment. So I'll just add some content. And gypsum partitions. And suspended ceilings. So if I click into the suspended ceilings clause and into the org notes panel, you can see the same org notes that we saw in the master specification. Including the one I created a few minutes ago. The same is true for the partition systems. We can see the same org notes that were visible within the master. And for the small unit unbound paving, again, there is an org note for this system clause. And also, just to advise that these org notes would also have been displayed if I had copied those clauses from the master to this specification. If that had been the case, I would also have the partly completed clause information from the master rather than just a blank clause from the content set. So just to explain what is happening here, whilst org notes are created against specific clauses, articles, or sections in one specification or master, they are actually associated with the classification for that clause, rather than that particular instance of the clause. As such, they are then actually presented against every other instance of the same clause, article, or section in every specification and master specification within your organization. This applies to both existing instances of that content and future instances where the content is subsequently added, as I have just shown here. Finally, for organization notes, let me click back to my dashboard. And at the top here, I have an org notes tab next to masters. And if I click on that, I can see a summary of each of the org notes, what classification it's linked to, who created it and last edited it, and when. Similar to other grids in Chorus, I can click on some of the column titles to sort by that column. And if I click again, it will change the sort direction. So that's what I wanted to cover in this masterclass. Just before I hand over to my colleague Gareth, I just wanted to mention the Suggest a Feature forum. You can access that from the Help menu in Chorus. And you can provide feedback regarding these features, or in fact any other feature via this forum. For example, suggestions for further development or enhancement of a feature, or suggestions for new features. We would also be interested in your use cases for the features shown today. You can search for and review any of the existing posts from the search field at the top here, add your own comments on most of them, or start a new topic. I'll now hand over to Gareth. He'll wrap the session up for us and mention a few other ways you can get in touch. Gareth, over to you.
Thanks very much, Martin. It's great to have the opportunity today to highlight just some of the benefits of an NBS Chorus subscription. I'll also explain how you can gain access to the Spec Notes and Organisation Notes that Martin demonstrated earlier, and the other really powerful features that are included in the Chorus Pro level of subscription. A subscription to Chorus Pro enables you to work anywhere with an internet connection. The ability to work remotely has never been as important as it has become over the past 18 months or so. Chorus is cloud-based, so you're no longer tied down to desktop software or remotely logging into VPNs to gain access to office networks to write your specifications. Chorus has been designed from the ground up. With its intelligent search function and easy-to-find content, writing your specification has never been so efficient. We have a team of around 30 technical authors researching and updating the technical content in NBS Chorus. With Chorus Pro, you can collaborate with external organizations and invite third parties into your project to write specification content for you, all controlled by permissions, of course. We have a number of plugins available, including for Autodesk Revit, which enables you to keep your specification and model in sync throughout the project timeline. With its inbuilt guidance and manufacturer's product library, NBS Chorus provides you with the right information at the right time, allowing you to make more informed decisions throughout the specification writing process. The Organisation and Specification Notes features are included in our most popular level of subscription, NBS Chorus Pro. Chorus Pro boasts a set of 9 advanced features, all designed to help you work smarter and more safely on your projects. I'll now provide a brief overview of these. As Martin has demonstrated, specification notes allow you to record project decisions directly into the specification that can be shared with the project team in real time. Organisation notes can be used to supplement the inbuilt NBS guidance with your own organization's knowledge. They're a great way to share best practice, lessons learned from previous projects, and preferred suppliers, etc. Particularly important for organizations with multiple offices, or indeed with staff working remotely, as is currently the norm. Masters allow effortless reuse of spec content for use on repetitive type projects. Common clauses tailored to your organization and clients are ready for you to use on new projects from day one, saving you time, increasing efficiency and productivity, whilst presenting standardized and internally QA'd content. When you apply organization notes to Office Masters, you have a really powerful workflow. With ready-to-use spec content supported by your own in-house guidance notes, as well as the inbuilt expert NBS guidance, specification decisions have never been so well informed. This facilitates a more inclusive approach to specification writing, as the task can be opened up to more people in practice than ever before, again providing great efficiencies whilst upskilling your workforce. The revision functionality in Chorus Pro allows you to easily keep track of changes made to your specification and compare these changes to previously published versions in the document history, providing a strong audit trail for future reference. Producing submittals for contractors manually from a specification is both time-consuming and prone to error. With Chorus Pro, you can instantly export a full list of submittals from your specification in a single click. Pre-formatted export options are available for a number of leading CDE providers. Chorus Pro allows you to export a summary report from specifications when using the Uniclass 2015 classification. This provides an outline of the content of the specification and the descriptions of products and systems that are included. It's also a great way of sharing information with clients and other disciplines, or if you're just looking to share a briefing of what specification content is required. Chorus Pro allows you to collaborate with the wider project team and not just within your own organization. Examples may include allowing specialists to assist with writing sections of your specification for you, all whilst being controlled by a flexible permissions model. It's possible within Chorus Pro for two organizations that are both developing specifications in Chorus to copy specification clauses between each other. This is especially useful for manufacturers who use Chorus to specify their products on behalf of their clients and want to transfer specifications from their Chorus account to their client's project, and for consultant specifiers working with design teams and wishing to exchange specifications between Chorus accounts. Chorus Pro allows organizations to create customized print style sheets for use on future projects so that you can issue specifications in a format and structure that is recognized industry-wide, whilst consistently maintaining your organization's branding and corporate identity. I hope that you found today's presentation both interesting and informative. If you'd like to discuss the benefits that an NBS Chorus Pro subscription can deliver to your organization, we have a number of ways that you can contact us. If you are an existing customer and would like to gain access to the Chorus Pro features, please email customerinquiries@thenbs.com. If you are new to NBS and would like to find out more information or receive a live demonstration of the platform, please email sales@thenbs.com or call us on 0333 696 0197. You can also send any questions through the questions box on the GoToWebinar platform, and we'll follow up with you after the session. A link to access a recording of today's session will also be sent to everyone that attended. On behalf of Martin and I, we'd like to close the session today by thanking everyone that attended the presentation, and we look forward to assisting you with your Chorus Pro requirements.